Mm. Before we start, can everybody mute, please? Thank you. 7:09, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Oh, that's a long 60 seconds. It's like whenever you're looking at the clock, it's like the clock stops. Isn't it? Okay, let's begin. So the agenda for this meetup is approximately, we're going to start with an introduction to the whole Solvio project. And next, we're going to quickly discuss just some topics that are on the table, such as some discourse updates that have been going on the Solvio forum and ETH Paris hackathon, and possibly Solvio summer retreat, which I'm super excited to tell you about. So let's get to it. So first of all, I'd like to say thanks a lot for joining the call, everyone. All of us are doing this in our free time. So I think we all deserve a little good feeling about putting in the effort to join the call and be interested in decentralizing the world's education system. There's still a lot of work ahead of us, but the first step tends to be the hardest, and we did that. Quick recap of last Solvio Regular Call. Oops. So a few words about me, because there's some people that don't know me. I studied maths and computer science at Oxford for 1 year, then I dropped out. I ran a company called OXSC, which did math camps and math revision courses for IB students. And for the last year and a half, currently, I work as an engineer at Gnosis, a blockchain company. In my free time, I like life hacking. I practice some spiritual practices, and I like to travel. So the first question you might think is, what will Solvio be? Right now, it's just an idea. What are we building towards? Solvio will be a decentralized education system. Each of these three words are important. The decentralized education system. Let's start by discussing some services that our products will provide. The first one is called Solvio Learn. And here I have a three-word summary: a personal curricular producer. Since then, I think a better summary would be at hand, such as a learning path search engine. In any case, we'll discuss each of these three in more detail in a second. Number two.
Can I mention something?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
How is it different from that thing like learnanything.com?
That's a really good question, and yeah, let me get to that maybe once we talk about this. I'll keep that question in mind.
Okay, cool.
Thanks for it. Number two, Solvio Advance. That will be a decentralized credential provider. And number three, Pruvio, which will essentially be recreating the bulk of mathematical theory in code, in JavaScript. And the end result will be both a math step-by-step validator and also a proof checker for proof search questions. So here I just wanted to outline three services that are part of the decentralized education ecosystem. As you can see, this one is a little bit different from the other two because it's kind of a separate app, but it's just three. It's just, it's not a comprehensive summary. It's literally handpicked. So the number of services that go into the decentralized education ecosystem is just enormous. And we might discuss some of them in a later part of this presentation. So let's start by discussing Solvio Learn. Solvio Learn is going to be a semantic aggregator, ranker, and search engine for learning resources. So it kind of assumes that there's this, it assumes three concepts. Number one is a learning profile, where you will be able to see what you already know, and you can either self-attest to that, or you can actually get credentials for it. We'll talk about that in a second with Solvio Advanced. And so that's the first part, a learning profile, where you have what you know, which is either verified or not. And second concept would be the concept of a knowledge tree, which is essentially a bunch of nodes that represent learning topics that are connected with edges that represent learning dependencies. And the third concept is this concept of like submitting online resources or in general learning resources, and together with reviews, which will also contain the learning dependencies for that particular. So I think that it's better if learning dependencies are tied to a resource, not a topic, because you can learn quantum physics without having to know physics and math, you know, some kind of children's book that explains it in 20 minutes. But obviously the depth of understanding of quantum physics will not be as large as if you, for example, take a university course on it. So learning dependencies, in my opinion, should be tied to resources rather than topics. So given these three concepts, we're able to have this Solvio Learn service, which will be an aggregator. So it will search kind of, it will serve as, just an aggregator, Google, Airbnb, whatever, all these, and also ranker due to the reviews, and also a search engine for a learning path together with the resources to learn that, to go down that path. By the way, this presentation, I'm doing it without any notes, so it's kind of like a little bit impromptu. Last time I actually had a written script for it, but I wanted this one to be a little bit more spontaneous. So what are these online resources? Sorry, what are these learning resources? Well, they can be online resources. So there's so many ways to learn online. Since the bulk of my education was informal, and the bulk of that was on the internet, I found that the internet can be extremely useful in learning stuff. I learned to code from not being able to write a single line to, being a Solidity developer, all thanks to the internet. So online resources can be things like, actual online courses or videos, articles, ebooks, podcasts, platforms like Stack Exchange, etc. So you can submit any of these as an online resource together with a review for it. And that review will contain the learning dependencies. So currently, what are the solutions to maybe I should first, when I say solution, I should first say what the problem is. So what's the problem? The problem is that, as I have learned so much on the internet, I still face a huge problem. And that is finding the learning path. If I want to know something, I don't know what else I should learn first. I don't know the order I should learn them in. Number two is finding the actual resources, doing the actual Google search to find them. And most importantly, them being customized for my learning preferences. So I had this thought the other day, right? Like if you go to Oxford, for example, whatever, if I continue my studies, then one of the advantages of being there is that all of the stuff that you learn is like to your particular level, because let's be honest, there's some kind of threshold for the competency or intelligence of people that can get into the university. Let's assume that, and the stuff that they provide you with, the stuff they teach you is accustomed to that threshold. So I'll give you a particular case what I'm thinking about. So recently, last week, I was learning about databases for this project, and I found a lot of stuff on the internet about databases, like these courses, how to do SQL, blah blah blah, and it was just rote learning of commands. But that's not what I wanted. So what I ended up actually being the most beneficial for me was a lecture notes from Cambridge University, which explained the concept of databases in a very mathematical, theoretical way. And just for me, coming from that kind of background, it was very, very good to learn relational algebra as an actual algebra, as a math theory, and then that way learn relational databases. So like this customization of learning based on your learning preferences is incredibly valuable. So that's the problem, those three things. So what are the solutions currently? How do you know what to learn, right? How do you know where to find it? So currently the space is very, very fragmented. And the solutions that I saw currently are these things called awesome lists on GitHub, for example. And also these things called roadmaps, which are oftentimes also on GitHub. Like you will develop a roadmap. Why don't I show you? Assuming my computer won't be too slow. Let's see if this works. So you have things like this, right? That are really good. Like this is exactly, or not exactly, but this is like, this validates the idea that this is necessary. And this thing has, well, I didn't even know, 71,000 stars. So there's a lot of demand for this. But essentially kind of my argument is that it's still unparameterized to your learning preferences. And it's kind of almost a pre-web way of doing things, right? I mean, this PNG image, you might as well see it on a Post-it note or, see it in a book. There's nothing about technology that's being used here. And I believe that technology can improve this service massively. And that's what we're going to discuss. So over those things, Solvio will provide the following advantages. I essentially already explained it. You can learn, anything, not just things that these roadmaps and awesome lists exist for, like coding. So this kind of assumes a two-sided market, but it also, the advantage of it is network effects. Once we get people learning, then there will be more resources and you will actually be able to learn anything. And most importantly, Solvio will be this, what I call semantic aggregator. So for individual resources, you'll be able to see their difficulty, their possible lengths, their quality, the interaction between resources. You'll be able to see the learning dependencies, what you have to learn first and second, both soft and hard dependencies. Also what it allows for. So if you learn this stuff, what can you actually do with it? What can you learn later? Where can you work? Some motivation to actually learn it. And most importantly, you'll be able to, as I already mentioned, get a full learning path for learning something. If I want to learn blockchain, maybe it's a good idea to learn electrical engineering, then go into computer science, then go into programming, then go into then on another branch maybe learn math, maybe learn number theory, maybe learn cryptography. On the first branch, learn distributed systems, and then distributed systems plus cryptography essentially yields blockchain. This would be a very long path, but again, it's all parameterized. You can learn this stuff in 1 week, right? You could learn about blockchain in 1 week. You could spend 1 hour on each of them and get to it. So you would also say how long you want to spend on it, and it will give you the best resources. Maybe there's a summary of blockchain in 1 hour, right? If you just want to spend 1 hour learning about blockchain. But if you want to spend 4 years learning about blockchain, like an actual equivalent of an undergraduate degree, well, then you would go through these topics, as I just discussed, in full depth as a university course would. So as you can see, I really believe this is super powerful and can transform the possibilities of self-learning. But learning resources can also be real-life learning, such as short-term intensive courses, long-term courses, tutoring, anything. And it can also be work experiences, such as internships or remote programming or even regular jobs. And also Solvio internal, work where you could actually even make money, such as, peer-to-peer teaching. One of the premises of this model, which I really, really like, is that there is no inherent on the data layer difference between a student and a teacher. Everyone can be both a student and a teacher. They can teach other people, they can grade other people's works. Say I want to find out about the 30 Years' War in the 17th century. So I read another person's essay, 5 pages, and it's really good. Like, man, I learned so much from that essay. It was really in depth. I'm going to give him a good grade. Or I read an essay and like it sucks. I didn't learn anything. It's just basic facts. I'm going to give him a bad grade. So this idea of like, or, to go back to teaching, one of the ways to motivate yourself to learn is to teach others. So I do that personally. When I wanted to learn cryptography, I arranged to have a presentation at the Prague Ethereum meetup in like a month and a half about cryptography. And now I had to really learn it because I was going to be presenting on it. In fact, this for me personally is much bigger motivation to learn about something. And not only that, it also sticks longer because now I have an hour-long presentation about cryptography on YouTube that I can watch now. Now I don't remember, 50% of it, but I can watch it anytime, 1 hour, and I'll be able to see myself and yeah, just get remembered. So I really like this idea of like peer-to-peer teaching and peer-to-peer grading for many reasons. Oh yeah, the other thing I wanted to say real quick is I've also done tutoring quite a lot for 6 years or so or whatever. And I think it really gave me some incredible skills, the ability to explain myself, some empathy. I find that, yeah, like I found that it really gave me skills that I really value a lot. And also this whole aspect of like getting paid for something. So you're doing somebody a service. So you have to, be on time, do a good service so that you don't get bad rating. So I think this idea of teaching is not only good on the side that you actually learn the best. Studies even show this by not taking tests, but by teaching somebody else. It's also good on the side that you are actually getting real life experience on customer service and making money, and that's super valuable. And obviously it's supply and demand, so there's a lot of if anyone can be a teacher, the price is very likely to drop from, we make it super easy, from $20 an hour to $5 an hour or $1 an hour, and we also make teaching much cheaper. Quick reality check. Can you guys all hear me and see my screen?
Everything okay?
Yeah.
Terrific. Let's continue. So yeah, I think I explained it pretty well, possibly even in more depth than I did the first time around. So we've already said that learning is not enough, and credentials are equally, if not more important. So this is essentially the difference between learning and education, is you need credentials. So the Solvio model will actually allow any credential provider, what I call centralized credential provider, like these guys, or even Pruvio, right? It's just going to be an app. So in the whole system, in the whole blockchain model, it will actually serve as a centralized credential provider, just like websites like Coursera and Udacity will. And even credentials from the legacy system, they can be incorporated. This part I call IPEF, the Interplanetary Education Framework, where Solvio will just be one possible way to get credentials. Or sure, I should say the other way around. The legacy system will be one of the possible ways to get credentials in the Solvio blockchain or data layer, whatever that will turn out to be. So yeah, that was Solvio Learn, concise. Let's talk about Solvio Advanced real quick. So, as I already mentioned, it's going to be decentralized grading or credentialing system. Now, there's a lot of possibilities, and this is one thing that I don't have fully thought out because it really depends on iteration. We want to make our system flexible so you can learn anything. I even at one point tried to do this tried to write this Medium article which I called Taxonomy of Education Systems, where I tried to kind of start from an a priori perspective about what an education system can offer you and try to define attributes that would describe it in that way. So, for example, whether you can learn anything, I think I called that fluidity. Whether you can learn it in any way you want, I think I called that malleability. And whether you can get tested in any way you want. Again, I had a cool sounding word for it. So yeah, the bottom line was that Solvio is all three. So there's a few possible solutions for how to actually do the credentialing part. The initial idea was you create something, whether it's code or math problems or essays or podcasts, meetups, anything on the internet or in real life that's recorded, such as a lecture at a Solvio meetup, and you can get graded in a peer-to-peer manner. We can use this concept of a shelling game in order that can serve as the oracle to get the data from the real world, the quality of the work or the presentation or whatever it is, to the data layer in a trustless way. So Solvio Foundation is not involved in this transfer of stuff. It's actually done in a trustless way. But there are other possibilities as well. Another one could be actual teaching. Yeah, if you teach somebody and they certify that you learned it, then maybe you should get some credentials for that. And also possibly testing. So testing can be done physical. There can be service providers that pop up, and what they offer is take an exam and pay us $10. These things actually already exist. Or they can be online. There's more and more ways that more and more universities are allowing students to take exams online. It assumes some kind of secure system, secure program that watches the processes on your computer, so you're not cheating. You should have for example, webcam turned on so that you are not cheating. And even some of these programs, they force you before the period to set your webcam and show a 360-degree view of your room so that you're not really cheating. For example, online poker companies have this real problem because they don't want anyone to be using helpers and cheat and bots. They want everyone to play according, in a fair way, according to the rules. So, this might sound a bit creepy, but it's just one option to radically decrease the cost of taking tests, yet maintain the same security, especially for example, people in less developed countries that it would be harder to afford for them a real test. Or testing can be done one-on-one online. I get tested by 3 experts, and we use a shelling game to find out what my grade is, so that none of them cheats and actually gives me a different grade, but they actually think about what my grade was according to some assessment. Oh yeah, I know why I mentioned the taxonomy of education systems, because I was saying that kind of the intro to this slide was going to be that the education system should be flexible, so it should allow you to learn anything in any way you want, and ideally get credentials in multiple ways that you want. But it should also be secure. So security, in a blockchain, is that there's some properties. Security in the Solvio system is that you can't cheat, or more specifically, it's much more costly on average to cheat than to actually learn it. So this is this attribute of like safeness and security. Shilling game, I already discussed. It's a way to get data from the real world to a data layer without the use of moderators in a decentralized way. Let's talk about Pruvio. So I think I explained quite a lot already. It's a tool that will be able to, by Albert. It's a tool that will be able to understand math essentially. So I actually have some code. Why don't I show you? I used to call it Provely. I have this project is like more kind of robust, but this one is the farthest. Perfect. So essentially, actually, I changed my mind. I'm going to show you the third one. This one can do less, but it's more illustrative when it comes to how to actually build Pruvio. So essentially what I did is I went through some university courses on the foundations of mathematics in Oxford Lecture Notes. That's courses called Introduction to University Mathematics, Logic, Set Theory. Those were the main three that I went through. And essentially the idea was to recreate the bulk of mathematical theory, starting from something like, you know, what I guess the start of anything would be logic and sets. And then you can define functions on that. Sorry, you first define relations, then you define functions, and then you kind of have your set theory, and then you can define some algebra as well, and then you can actually do interesting stuff such as middle school math. Yeah, that was kind of the idea, and then it will say, you know, prove something such as for real x and y, x squared plus y squared is also real, and then you will actually be able to prove it. So as I said, this version is not finished, but I do have one that does prove something. So Provely 1 is kind of taking a big shortcut, but it's actually able to prove the arithmetic geometric mean inequality on this beautiful expression. So let's test it out. So this is a quick demo portion. Okay. Oh, okay. I know how to, just give me like 10 seconds. Perfect, found it. I need to use Babel, not Node. Let's see, 3, 2, 1. Ta-da! So what did it do? The question was prove that x squared plus xy. Actually, I don't know which of these it proves, but let's see what it proves. It's an or statement. It's either equal to or greater than, and the left-hand side is a sum of a quotient, x divided by y, and y divided by x. And it's saying that this sum of these two quotients is always, it's a proposition. It's saying that it's either equal to or it's greater than, and the inner object is the same. So this thing is always either greater than or equal to, and let's see what the right-hand side is. It's a product of 2 and 1. So this thing is always greater than or equal to 2. So it just proved, you know, a middle school math Olympiad question on the inequality between arithmetic mean and geometric mean. Khan Academy can't do this. So I think this product will really be revolutionary. Current learning websites and platforms don't have what's called computer algebra. And this will allow two things. It will allow you to train and also get credentials for high-level problems such as math Olympiads or university problems. But also for regular learning, you will be able to actually do math step by step. Coming from a 5-year math teacher, I think this will be revolutionary. So Khan Academy right now, it asks you, here's a system of equations, what's the answer? And, you don't know. But now it will ask you the system of equations, and it will say, okay, it will be a chat bot, and it will say, okay, start working. And you will say, okay, x equal to y minus 3. And it will say, oh, sorry, I couldn't get there. Could you please help me? And you wouldn't be able to help it because maybe it was an incorrect implication. But then you would say x equal to y minus 4, and it would check the implication, and it would allow you to proceed. So it's essentially, verifying mathematical implications in JavaScript. So the UI would be instant. It wouldn't even go to the server. So why I like this is it will allow both learning and credentialing aspect of Solvio. And I think this project has a lot of value independently. As I said, it's not directly related to the whole Solvio model per se, but it's a product that I think has so much potential, and it's one of the elements of the decentralized education system. So that's why I decided to include it here. So we could sell this to schools, for university, for homework, for entrance exams, for final exams, universities. We could start math Olympiads, and we could also sell it to existing platforms. And this will really give us leverage, either revenue or leverage, for them to try to integrate with us, whether it's schools, universities, or current platforms. So let me just talk about a few points here. So informal education is improving super fast, but the credentialing sucks. There's no way to get credentials on something you learned by yourself. I don't have credentials on anything I ever learned online the last 6 years part-time. But on the other hand, formal education is, in the world that we can create and live in with technology, rigid and inflexible. It takes on average 1.5 years before your decision to apply to Oxford or Cambridge from you actually start learning anything. Because you can only send your application in October and you start the next October. So if you decide end of October that you want to apply to those universities, you have to wait a year to be able to apply until next October, and then another year to begin studying. So I think it's a little bit of a waste of the world that you have to wait up to 2 years from, okay, I'm going to start studying, my business didn't work, or my dropout didn't work, or I want to advance my career. You have to wait 2 years until you learn something. Talk about inflexibility. And what Solvio tries to do, it tries to combine the best of both worlds. Okay, I'm not going to show you a diagram. I have a diagram where there's like things like IB, or I should say things like, so high schools, and then there's things like IB, SATs, APs, which provide the credentialing for high schools. And then there's, universities, and then there's internationally recognized degrees that provide the credentialing for universities. So where does Solvio fit in? So for high schools, you can use things like Khan Academy. For universities, you can use things like Coursera. There's so many of these websites. I just mentioned 2 of them that are my favorite. But, there's so many. Like, I even have a list. There's Socratic, there's Proto School, so many great websites out there. And Solvio fits into these 2 gaps. It's the credentialing factor for both high schools and universities. It tries to compete on the same layer as IB, SATs, and internationally recognized degrees. So we say that in Solvio, the learning system, we're agnostic to it. You can use Solvio with any learning system. However, I personally think that Solvio is most suitable for, as I've already pounded quite a lot, self-learning. but also short-term intensive courses and short-term work. Now, there's a lot of evidence that short-term courses actually work better than long-term courses. The only exceptions were music and languages, but that's comparing it to the regular way of learning languages or music, which is in school. If you were to compare it to an intensive language day or a music concert or music tour, then it's very likely that those would come out as more efficient, just as all the other subjects. And really, self-learning, I think that it's limited and bounded by interest or enthusiasm, but it's very unarguably the most efficient way to learn because the costs are almost zero. And I think that the most effective solutions should be built for. And in the current system, self-learning is not possible because there's not a credentialing system for it, which will provide that. So we'll make the most effective solution viable. Just go through this real quick. Maybe one thing that I'll mention is here. Let me fire up this thing called the Solvio white paper, and I'm just going to show you one thing. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen because this is public, and I want to show you my Google Drive. Okay, found it. So this is something I wrote in April of last year. And this is the diagram that I wanted to show you. So Solvio, these things already exist. We're not a content provider. There's amazing content providers that I personally love. We're not competing with them. We're building the credentialing layer, the bridge between formal and informal education. This is an example of a learning path. You might, oh, this is an interesting one. So you first learn logic, then analysis, then electrical engineering, then computer engineering, then software engineering and network engineering, then distributed systems, then blockchains, the concept of a blockchain, and then you apply that to currencies and you get a cryptocurrency, which is Bitcoin. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I mentioned pretty much the same thing in this presentation. That's pretty cool. The things had different names back then. So this is now called Pruvio, and this is now called Solvio Learn. But what I did want to show you is this thing that came up last Q&A. Okay, this is also important, or not important, but just something worth talking about. So the advantages for Europe and Asia. I think that in Europe, education in English is really sought after, yet quite expensive. I went to an English school in Prague. The Solvio model will, of course, allow you to learn in any language, including in English, for free. Get the best teachers from the world, such as Salman Khan, or attend a short-term course, whether in Prague or in Paris, wherever you want. But for example, in the US, there are also other huge advantages, which is the fact that private education is very, very expensive. So university might cost $60,000-$70,000 per year, and public education tends to be on average of lower quality. So rather than pay $70,000 per year, a lot of students decide to learn themselves. Well, now they can also get credentials for it. Here, this is what I wanted to talk about. So Solvio will will develop some really valuable skills in the modern era in the students, such as responsibility, the ability to work remotely or self-learning, which is super important skill. It'll also lead to new learning methods. So if you have, competitive market, perfect market, you will have competition. And I can't wait to see the possibilities that teachers, creative, entrepreneurial teachers, what I call teacherpreneur, right? Why is that not a word? Well, now it is. So teacherpreneurs will come up with amazing courses online, but mostly I'm talking now about physical, 1 week, 2 week, 1 month, whatever, that will just gain so much motivation and curiosity in the subject. It's going to be amazing. We also allow anyone to teach. So currently, most national systems, they require minimum of 1 year. So for example, if I want to teach in the UK as a math teacher, well, no, you can't. I'm sorry. I would first have to do a 1 year. Well, first of all, I would have to go back to school, which would take on average 1.5 years, then finish my undergraduate, and then get a teaching certificate. So it's like 5 years from me deciding to be a teacher right now to actually becoming one. So in our model, it's not based on credentials from the legacy system. It's based on skill. If a 16-year-old can teach better than a 50-year-old, go for it. I personally think, from my personal experience, there's a weak correlation, if any, between intelligence / understanding, knowledge of the topic, and the ability to teach. Current universities, they assume this correlation is perfect. You get taught by professors, and they in fact have to teach. Well, if it turns out that this correlation is weak, why should you be taught by professors, and why should professors be forced to teach? It's a two-sided fallacy. So professors could focus on research, and students could learn from whoever is the best teacher, say a professor or somebody else. So yeah, I mean, dropping out is just very briefly. Yeah, this will make it easier for you to go back to school. It will make it easier for you to experiment. Dropping out won't be a life long decision that's very, very hard to revert. You can go pursue your music career when you're 16-year-old, and after it fails in 16 months, then you go back to school and you'll have an amazing experience. So that'll be completely different from everybody else, which is the kind of most one of the very important things for contributing to the world is different people. We need people in the 21st century that think differently, that have different experiences. And now this is the section that is really important. One of the advantages of our model is that you don't have to spend time with people you don't enjoy. Only 31% of students in the US think that their teachers make school an exciting place to learn. Bad student-teacher interactions often result in personal animosities. This hinders the learning process for both the student and for others and the teacher, wasting everyone's time. So in the Solvio model, students pick the teachers that they understand the best from. Now, this is very important. So in the US alone, every day, about 3.2 million students are victims of bullying. And every day, 160,000 students skip school because of bullying. And 67% of students believe that schools respond poorly to bullying. Adult help is infrequent and ineffective. So in the Solvio model, bullying is virtually infeasible, as one can choose who he or she spends time with. So this will be, I think, one of the major advantages of like a huge thing that has to be solved, right? And I think that to solve this problem, and the next one, which I'm also going to talk about, it's not enough to set up an NGO and talk about it and get grants and try to make the world a better place by talking. You have to look at the system, how it works, at a fundamental level. Only then can you come up with a solution that's gonna be better at a fundamental, a long-term, scalable level. So if you were to look at it at really, at this fundamental level, you would find out that the root cause of unpleasant interactions, such as bullying and sexual harassment, is that students and teachers are forced to be in the same classroom or school together. So the next point is only 10%, that 10% of students have been harassed by teachers or other school employees in their life. There's student-to-student harassment, student-to-teacher, teacher-to-teacher, and teacher to student. And again, I think this can be dramatically decreased if you can choose who you spend your time with. Let's go back to the presentation. How are we going to execute this idea? So there are essentially a couple of models I've been thinking about in the last few years that I've been thinking about this. One of them would be a for-profit route. I don't think that's appropriate. Another one would be a non-profit route with a token, with a blockchain token. But in the end, I kind of at least currently decided to go with a non-profit route without a token, blockchain token, without a token sale or an ICO. Why is that? So you don't have to do crypto economics such as utility tokens or security tokens, KYC, AML, all that stuff, which leads to the next point, which is less regulation. But most importantly, the tokenomic models of the current utility tokens haven't even been proven to work. They're huge experiments. So I don't think that's a good idea. And people will be motivated to work on the project nevertheless. I think there is nothing more impactful I can do than to change the world's education system. I think everybody feels that it must change and we should do it. So I've seen how I've been motivated to work on it, and I think that other people will be motivated as well. There's only maybe two bigger issues than in education I think of, and that's the world's energy consumption and world peace. But I think world peace can be achieved if you allow more cultural exchange in your education system, rather than kind of a nationalistic, top-down, state-driven curriculum. And finally, it's going to be better for the end goal, which I'm going to talk about in a second. What's the end goal of the project? On a legal level, I'm starting an Estonian nonprofit. I became an Estonian e-resident a month ago, and as soon as I get my badge and my private key, I'm gonna start a Estonian nonprofit with the name Solvio Foundation. I have talked with lawyers in Switzerland, but I've been convinced that it's too expensive at the moment, and it's better to bootstrap the project with a firm in a country that's the leader of e-government, and everything is in English, which is Estonia. By the way, I've since then actually found out even that in Estonia, all education certificates are on the blockchain. At least that's what the online source that I've read said, which is super cool because it increases the chances that they would be interested in this project. And in some way, if you think about it, it's the 0 to 1 is going to be the hardest. Getting acknowledged by the first government is going to be the hardest. And let me talk about that. Okay, let me talk about that now. But I think I have a slide on this as well. The end goal for Solvio is to be acknowledged by government for reasons of immigration, getting government jobs or corporate jobs even, tax breaks, everything. we want this to be at the same level as formal education. And as far as I know, this is the first project ever to try to build an education system with the goal of it being acknowledged by government. So that's why I'm super excited. And why did I talk about this? Because it's the hardest one is going to be 0 to 1. So if you think about it, once we get acknowledged by the first government, such as Estonia, European Union country, then you will have a degree, a bachelor's degree from Estonia. So that means you will have a European Union bachelor's degree. You can work in the Czech government. You can apply for a master's or a PhD in any country in the European Union. And, conversely, you will also be able to, anywhere in the world, you can get acknowledged for your foreign degrees just by applying to some government office. So that's going to be super, super powerful. It's getting acknowledged by just one single government. To change the world's education, we're going to need money for us to join full time, for us to be able to attend conferences, and make the project really justice by building the best possible modern apps with amazing engineering talent. For that, we're gonna need revenue and donations. I expect the bulk of the money to come from donations, either crowdfunding or specific institutions, such as some Ethereum grantors, incubators. Y Combinator is already funding nonprofits. On their part, it's fully charitable. You go through the same exact program and you get the same amount of money, but they don't take any shares or stock. They can because nonprofit doesn't have shares because they can't distribute dividends. So the point of a nonprofit. So they're already doing this. It's really amazing. And we should apply there once we have a product and traction. And there's also philanthropists like Karel Janeček in Czech Republic and in the US. More and more philanthropists these days that I see are being more and more interested in education because they realize that it's the backbone of the 21st century. And I list a few here. We might also be able to generate revenue. So I've already mentioned some of them. Going into government and providing this as a service for them. So educational system as a service, ESAS, might be able to generate revenue for the foundation. I think I've added a few more points here since then. We might crowdfund using swag. That would be a super cool way to crowdfund, which I don't know if it's realistic, but make clothes, branded clothes, Solvio, and sell that at a regular cost and be able to crowdfund this in that way. But most importantly, websites like Coursera, if you actually sign up for their affiliate program, they actually offer you quite a lot of money if you redirect people from your website to one of their courses and they sign up. Same with Udemy, etc. So this is an amazing opportunity. I mean, we want Solvio Learn to be the go-to consumer app when it comes to learning anything. So imagine, a lot of people using this, thousands, and us being able to generate $1 or $3 from every course that any person enrolls. Essentially a free way for the whole system to fund itself. So we could, for the team, I prefer using freelancing services such as Gitcoin, which is completely commission-free. And we should also contact some high-profile institutions or individuals to serve as advisors, co-founders of the project. When I say institutions, I already mentioned governments, but I could also mention universities. One of the side projects that we could do is try to persuade universities to open up their learning resources. So currently, if you go to a place like courses.mass.ox.ac.uk actually you don't even need to do slash archive. Then you can actually see every single course this year and be able to click on it and be able to see all the lecture notes and all the problem sheets for every single one of the weeks. So this is incredible, but there's a catch. Not every single department offers this. If you want to learn math, like, you're set, just go and learn it. But if you want to learn computer science, well, it turns out Oxford Computer Science does not provide lecture notes. So then you got to go to, for example, one of the other universities that does is Cambridge. So then you look up the computer laboratory. Okay, I can't find it now, but you essentially Google computer laboratory Cambridge, and you get all the lecture notes. I think it's in teaching. Okay, I found it finally. So here. So you go to this URL, and then you click on any year that you want, and bam, same thing here. Both lectures and problem sheets. So how can we contribute? Well, apart from all the stuff that I already said, which you can fill in the dots, we can rank these, we can blah blah blah, find out how long they take, so on and on. What we could also do is provide additional resources for somebody using these resources. So currently, I don't think there's a lot of people out there on the internet that are going through Oxford's geometry lecture notes, right? Maybe there are, but we can't, currently the internet doesn't connect us. But now if you enable this decentralized education system and you say that these lecture notes are really good, because they are, I can testify for it, then there will be more people. And now suddenly you can get discussions about the problem sheets, but even better than that, we can integrate the problem sheets with Pruvio. So these same problems that you have here, you will be able to prove in a chatbot interface using LaTeX math in our app, and it will be all verified step by step, and you'll be able to get credential for it. So that doesn't not just save the world resources, that at this university there are people that are being paid to review your homework every single week, and it's a lot of stuff. It's like 8 pages per week, and it's like 4 students. So it saves a lot of money, but much more importantly, it's more fun and much more instant. I think you learn better too. So yeah, that's what I wanted to. So we could make a project to encourage universities to open up the lecture notes and then integrate the whole thing. Students could build resources on top of it, could build side questions to these, all in Pruvio, and then people could solve them. Yeah, I mean, there's just so many things that come to my mind right now, but I've already been talking for quite a long time, so maybe I should move on. So I'll begin working on this part-time from March, and I plan to start working on it full-time by the end of the year, earliest September, sometime then. And I'm looking for co-founders for the project. My personal goal in 2019 will be to get the first round of funding. That's kind of my personal goal. We'll see what that amount is, but it should be about at least $150,000 to $200,000 in order to be able to have a few people working on this full time, to make an app, maybe even start working on Pruvio, etc. I'll go to spread the message, and it's equally important. Get in touch with those partners, institutions that I talked about. We're going to need at least a few people working full time. I'm also going to start this is completely off topic, podcast. I want to start Let's Change the World, or Let's Change the World Education, something that sounds cool. And there's going to be 2 tracks, a technical one and an education one. And essentially, I'm going to try to invite incredible people around the world into the podcast from the education space and from the technical space, such as the Ethereum space and others. And essentially tell them about the idea and get their feedback and maybe their participation as an advisor. That's kind of the pitch for this podcast that I want to get going in March. IPF, I've already briefly touched upon the interplanetary education framework. Let's not go into detail on that. How would everything work in practice? There's 3 stages to Solvio. Number 1 is a one-sided platform, a consumer app called whatever. I mean, I was gonna say it's called Solvio Learn, but Pruvio is also an app that actually doesn't even have a market when it comes to being a platform. So you can either have a 2-sided market, such as Airbnb. You can have a 1-sided market like Facebook, or Solvio Learn, where you just submit reviews. It's a 1-sided market. Or you can have, a 0-side market, such as well, I mean, any website would be, well, not any website, but for example, Pruvio. It doesn't require. It's essentially an algorithm. That's the bulk of the hard stuff there. I expect that project to be very difficult from a technical point of view. So I have looked up people that are experts in a field called computer algebra. One guy working at the University of Vienna. And I plan to actually get in touch, try to pitch the project, and maybe ideally, if they're interested, they could help us out in making this happen. A lot of people that are into the computer algebra space, such as a program called Coq Proof Assistant, they're not really thinking about the application in education. So this is what the program looks like in 2019. This is the latest version, 2019 copyright. So yeah, it's not exactly what you would call a modern graphical interface. And the idea is to transform the power of this program, which is for computer algebra, into a modern web app that can be used for education. This is used for research and academia. We'll use it for teaching and learning. And fun fact, Pruvio integrates super cool with Solvio because we don't want to provide in Pruvio the lectures, the explanations, the problems. Why would we want to do that? We want to provide a platform. Now anyone can submit courses there, explanations, problems, and other people can rate the learning paths. And once you open the app, you can say, hey, I want to learn this topic of math, or even physics or chemistry or computer science, graph theory, if it expands, in 1 hour, or I want to learn it in 3 years. And you'll be able to learn it that way. And you will get the best curriculum, the best learning path that other people have rated. Again, I could talk about all the associations forever. Let's go back to the presentation. The next stage of Solvio is going to be a 2-sided platform. We're going to onboard teachers, possibly schools or universities, and really build out the teaching aspect of the physical course part of it. Finally, we're going to try to offer this to governments. I've already briefly touched upon the thing I call the decentralized education. It's not a good name. We should just call it an ecosystem. You could have a social network that would essentially, whenever you want to learn something, it would automatically get posted. Other people could boost you to motivate you. And similarly, when you get credentials for something, it would be automatically posted. Other people could, high five you. This would, if it's literally automatic posting with no images, videos, or statuses and comments, just very simple interface, then it's very easy to build and an MVP in a few weeks, and could be part of the very first version of Solvio. mobile and web app. Yeah, it's essentially so Solvio is kind of agnostic to the learning framework, and so there will be essentially, so many learning frameworks out there, and some kind of marketplace for these learning frameworks is another possibility. A school or tutor dashboard for people to manage their courses or their teachings, a person learning calendar that will send you notification every evening saying, tomorrow you're going to learn this and this and this, and at 12 o'clock it will tell you, okay, so you've been learning math for 3 hours, let's go now to learn history, right? And it will just serve as your personal assistant when it comes to your self-learning. Then it will tell you, oh, by the way, next week you're going to a course and you're going to be all excited because it's going to be awesome. And finally, kind of an Airbnb for this. So there's going to be a lot of travel. We don't want, we want to, interview the people beforehand that are going to be where our students are going to be staying, them to provide a proof of a lack of a criminal record. Or we could even do student exchanges where students go and exchange house or home with another student so that they could travel to a different city, and the family takes care of the guest. So this like travel aspect to it is another thing that could totally be. So I'm really excited. Whenever there's something new in society, there's always a lot of room for entrepreneurship. I can't wait to see all of the things that integrate and support and advance the idea of stateless education. I would start in big cities. The advantage of that is that it's a higher concentration of schools, so you will be able to attend more courses, or I should say a higher selection of courses without having to change accommodation. There's huge costs in changing accommodation because you have to travel, you have to pay for the accommodation. So if you go to a school like in Prague or New York City, then you will be able to choose courses, but not just from your school, from all the 20 schools that are in your 10-mile radius. So this is super, super powerful. I mean, I've already talked a lot about the learning system, so this is just not comprehensive. It's handpicking. I talked about peer-to-peer learning, peer-to-peer grading. I talked about a lot of stuff. Another possible aspect is you could have like kind of a private director of studies, subject-specific mentors that would guide you on your learning journey. So this is I took some ideas about Solvio from my time at university, and at university we did have this director of studies. Each DOS only had about 12 students. It was very personal, and it worked really, really well. Like you would meet once every 2 weeks and for 20 minutes and discuss that all of your studies are going according to plan. And if you're going to meet somebody one-on-one every 2 weeks, it's a lot of motivation to do your work. You don't want that meeting to be awkward. So I kind of already touched up on this. Solvio Learn Advance could be one app. Another thing that we'll talk about in a second is kind of gamification of learning. So this concept of reputation in the Solvio network. But let's really talk about that in a second. I want to leave you with two thoughts. Bitcoin create decentralized and open currency. Solvio will create a decentralized and open education system. So Solvio is Bitcoin of education. And the last thing is not that cool. So that's the end. So before you guys jump in and we have we have a discussion, let me quickly recap what's been going on in the world of Solvio in the last month and a half or whatever when we had the last call. The answer is a lot. So since then, I made social media profiles, which you don't really have to worry about, but there's one that you do, and it's called the Solvio Forum. which is currently the homepage of the project. Yeah, we actually got sponsored for this. So normally you have to pay $100 per month to be able to for this app. It's called Discourse. But I sent them an email and I told them about their project, and they liked it so much that they gave it to us for free. So we're saving over $1,000 per year. So, did I want to say anything else? Oh yeah. So we're going to talk about ETH pairs, but now just quickly outline the discussions that have been going on. So in this post, we can kind of discuss the technical architecture, just say architecture, not infrastructure, of the Solvio app. So how all of the reviewing, learning dependencies, topics, knowledge trees, learning profiles, all of that is going to work. So check that out if you're interested in that. Finding MVP is currently not active. This is currently not active either. Here you can find all of the accounts for social media. This I don't even remember what it is. Here we talked a little bit about boring stuff. Here, yeah, the next time it's all going to be here for the regular calls. I'm always going to post a topic in the category meetups and social, where you can always find the link. And now we're getting into the interesting stuff. So let's talk about this. So quick recap. So I think that we should start with a reputation system that is not tradable, i.e. doesn't have any monetary value because you can't trade it. And for example, every time you submit a resource or review to the Solvio database, you will gain 10 reputation points for just the link, or up to 50 reputation points for a complex review. It could also be used in staking for reviewing. I mean, I read this paragraph if you're interested in all the things that it can be used for. And that's kind of a good way to build an MVP, because it doesn't require us to integrate with Ethereum, at least not at first. Well, if this works out, it'll be super duper cool, because reputation is so much easier to manage and implement than an actual monetary system. But at some point, we'll have to integrate monetary system for courses and for teaching. I talked about that in this presentation. And then the way it could work is every single time you earn a buck on Solvio, such as by running a course or by running a tutoring or by grading, then you would also get 1 reputation point. So yeah, the people that contribute to the platform, whether it's through content or through teaching, would be gaining reputation. That touches upon the topic of governance. If you're interested in decentralized governance, this is a very, very fun post to read. And finally, the last couple. So here we essentially talk about whether we should the decentralization of our database. So whether we should start with a centralized database or a decentralized one, such as OrbitDB. On that note, I actually had a call with people from OrbitDB today, a few hours ago, and I told them about the project, and they really, really liked it. They're super smart people. I have a lot of respect for them. And my conclusion from that, apart from the introductions, and I'm going to be joining their next call, etc. I already got some content from it, which was that pretty much everything is possible in their distributed database. So we could essentially build the whole app from day one using a public database. So you would have a private key in your app, and then you would sign any submissions to the database with that key. And in this way, our app would just be client like any other, and anybody else could build an interface that that is a different interface. If the foundation, the Solvio Foundation, does very poorly 5 years from now, somebody else could take over and use all the data. We still need a decent computation layer, but let's leave that for another day. There's some ideas about the Solvio logo. So if you're interested in that, this is a really cool topic with the most discussion currently. And now let's talk about the other two main topics of this call, which is ETH Paris and the first ever Solvio retreat. So just a quick background. ETH Paris is going to be a hackathon. It's part of the ETH Global series, and we applied. So who's we? Me, Alex, Matt, Scala, and Albert. Alex's friend, and Albert was in the call earlier. I met him for the first time on this call. So if we get accepted, then we'll be going there. I'm going to Paris. I'll be in Paris at that time anyways for a conference, Ethereum conference. So it's just perfect that I joined the hackathon as well. I know if we get accepted, it will be super awesome because it will allow us to work together on building a rough MVP. I think that at first we shouldn't build on top of Ethereum. I justify that in the forum, but I think it's still worth going there because we are planning to integrate Ethereum once for programmable money, for tutoring, for teaching, etc. Once we build that part of the app. So if we get accepted, there's no reason not to go. So that would be super cool. And finally, what do you guys think about organizing a summer event? So some ideas that I have, I'm gonna tell you my favorite, a bicycle ride. So me and Matt, a few years ago, and a few other friends, we organized a bike ride from Prague to Brno to Ostrava. And we sort of slept in a tent in the woods every single night. We just jumped. Czech Republic is the country with the highest density of natural lakes in the world. So every few kilometers, you see a lake with pristine, clean water. So you don't have to shower even. It's warm and you just pull out your swimming trunks. And it was just so nice as a way to disconnect from technology and connect with people through discussions and good food along the way in restaurants, that I would be totally down repeating this. If you guys want to spend 4 days traveling by bicycle from Prague to Brno, you would just fly into the city, and we would rent bikes, and I have a tent, and we would either rent out sleeping bags or you would bring your own. Then I would be super pumped about this. There's other options as well if you don't like this proposal, but I kind of like it. I really like it. What do you guys think?
Well, I have never done such a thing before, so I'm not sure, to be honest.
I had never done it 3 years ago either. Actually, it was 6 years ago now. 6 years ago, I'd never done either. Every time you do something for the first time, it's the first time by definition.
Yeah, but like, it sounds appealing. If I have time in summer, then I will look into that.
Absolutely. I mean, so the advantage of this is that we get to really connect and discuss and connect together so that if we start working on this full time, we'll kind of know what to do and know each other better. Another possibility would be to hack together. There'll be ETH Berlin together with DAppCon in August, the Berlin Blockchain Week. We could go there. So the retreat could be in Berlin essentially. Hack around, maybe go to a conference. By the way, the conference that I'm talking about, DAppCon, it's organized by the company I work for. And last year, they offered 90% discount to students.
Yeah, I would love to look into that. Can we
It was
apply
really
now or
cool.
what's the deadline?
It was really cool. This is actually where I met Ansgar, who's also on the call. And even if you're not a student but you're actively learning full time, as another member of this call, then I'm pretty sure they would my colleagues would grant you the student pass. So
Can
we
you send me a link later so I don't forget about that?
absolutely. In fact, if you just click here,
It's in there already.
there are some other options. Meet for Berlin Blockchain Week. If you click on this and you go to dappcon.io, then you will see an outdated website. They haven't updated it yet, but it's either going to be July or August of 2019.
Okay, I go look into that. Thanks.
Perfect. And I mean, actually, I could have a talk there. That's what I'm planning is to apply there, to have a talk there about Solvio. Should be super duper cool. So yeah, that's the possibilities for. So yeah, whenever someone is ready to speak up, I'm ready to listen.
Hi, Dom. How's it going? I really like the presentation of this one. Maybe you can also cut it and upload it on YouTube and also on the. I know there's a Solvio website because you own the domain.
Yes, there is actually. So I have the domain solvio.org, and solvio.com is also available. Currently, it redirects to my former company, which is a math camp company, which would be very easy to redirect. One thing that I wanted to show you guys is validation that short-term courses work better than long-term courses. Well, check out this. Every single student that wrote me a review, I screenshotted it and I posted it on this website. Let's have a look. 5 stars. She went from 0 to hero. 5 stars. This is my little brother. 5 stars. 5 stars. Okay, this is getting kind of boring, isn't it? Well, I'll give you a hint. There's actually 1 4-star here if you look really hard. The point is not that I'm a good teacher. The point is that short-term courses work much better for mathematics and other things. The students go to school and they spend 40 minutes in a classroom. Well, they spend the first 10 minutes getting into the thing and then 10 minutes realizing that they don't have their textbook. And then they don't understand the rest of the lecture because they're not up to date when it comes to material. Well, imagine a combination of self-learning that's self-paced together and then going to a short-term course where you can really dive deep into the projects, which is or into the questions or into the topics, which is so important for something like the sciences or mathematics.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
Anyways,
yeah,
so I don't know why I always do this. You guys always ask a question and then I go completely off topic.
I saw it redirects to your website. That's why I supposed you own it. So if you could, because I think the presentation this time was really cool. Maybe you can trim it again and also post it on the Solvio website. It would be pretty cool. I like the idea of the retreat, definitely. I'm not a big fan of bike tours, but I mean, we'll figure something out. And,
why not? You don't want cycling through nature, woods, and lakes for 4 days?
Well, I'm not a fan as of now. Maybe I'll change my mind. But anyways, but it's a good idea. I like it. Let's keep up the discussion. And regarding ETH Paris, let's just keep up the discussion in the forum, what we'll build. I liked your comment, so just keep it up. And also everybody else who will not be part, just follow the discussion and tell us what you think like a minimal product should look like, so we can build something according to the interest of the community. So that'd be really great, because the hackathon is already in 1 month. And again, your presentation was pretty cool. I agree with everything you said, Don.
Awesome. I'm flattered. Anyone else have any comments or questions?
Yeah, so I of course also like the presentations, and I like a question. So it's look like so for now, like in the first phase, you would like to focus on math. Is that true?
So sorry, could you repeat the question?
Like in the first phase of the program, you would like to focus on math first.
No, so yeah, I don't think I explained
so,
well.
at least in the
The consumer part, I plan it to be primarily Solvio Learn or Solvio Advanced, Solvio app. That's the core product of our entire movement. But if we also have the resources and the talent, and this is something that can be, we can involve academia in this. A student in software engineering or mathematics can write their master's thesis or their PhD thesis on building Pruvio, right? Building computer algebra in a learning learning facing app. So then, assuming that, then it would be super cost efficient, and we would be able to do proper research at the same time. So yeah, my short answer is it will depend on the circumstances, but it's like, I think it also depends on how good the idea is, right? How good of an app it is. If it's something that I just like because it's my crazy idea and nobody's ever going to use it, then we shouldn't build it ever. But if it's something that can gain a lot of traction for various reasons, while requiring not a lot of money, and we can then leverage it with Khan Academy and with other platforms in schools and universities, then we should start building it as soon as possible. So yeah, it's probably going to be priority number 2. Priority number 1 is Solvio app.
And I was so curious about the credentials.
Yeah.
So what is kind of priority is for the credentials, and do you have any visions how credentials can be obtained, like online, offline, or?
That's a great question, and I am going to answer it by looking up the topic called technical infrastructure. And I have this article here that I wrote some time ago. In the past, Solvio used to be called Learnasa. And this is what I have so far. So I have done some work as to writing the specifications for this. So if you really want to go deep into it and see how it works on a data layer, feel free to check this out. There's a lot of things that are still not finished, such as a lot of things. But it does provide some kind of MVP for the data layer of how the topics and reviews would work, and it's kind of what I base my current thinking on this document on. So yeah.
Yeah, what I'm so what I'm thinking is like, if like so the convenient way is like to do it online for both parties, like student and for the teachers as well.
Yeah.
But like we need to think of a system to prevent cheating, because if we want our credentials to have a good weight or value as the traditional credential, then we have to think of that. And
Absolutely,
also one thing,
I totally agree. That's why the system needs to be secure. In other words, on average, the cost of cheating is higher than the cost of learning it. When I say cost, I mean a generalized cost. So time, money, and risk and comfort.
And also one thing we can look into that, like also Duolingo also offers to offer the students some degree, and they do that like, so they will have some assistant that will meet the student online, and they will Yeah, so there will be some exam and stuff. I think they had started it like not a long time ago, and their degrees also start getting some instructions.
What's the
Are you
name?
talking about like online universities?
Duolingo. I'm talking about Duolingo. They
Oh,
also
Duolingo.
yeah,
Right.
they
Yeah,
do
totally.
offering also some degrees to the students.
Oh, really? Terrific. I mean, that's, another cog in the Solvio model. It's amazing. I'm super excited about. I actually love Duolingo. Well, not love, but I admire it. Maybe that's a better word. I haven't used it because I don't have the willpower to learn a language, but I have tried it, and it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's a good example of a gamified education. So we can take some inspiration from that.
Absolutely. Good point, Tunda. Thanks for it. And Tunda, introduction. Tunda is a mathematician. He won the Czech National Math Olympiad several times. He's the best Czech mathematician. And furthermore, he also, I think, got a bronze in internationally or even a silver, which is super cool. So last call, I think you had to leave early. And then we talked about Pruvio. And I was like, why isn't Tunda here? So what the people were saying in the last call was that they think this is, well, there were mixed responses. So one response I got later was that this is impossible. And during the call, the response was that this is super easy. So I want to ask you, do you, as somebody who's part mathematician, part software engineer, do you share my understanding of the difficulty of this project, that it's not easy? We might want to involve academics in this, or like people that are very smart in this space, that have degrees in this space. But at the same time, it's possible to write mathematical theory, algebra theory in JavaScript. Do you share my knowledge, understanding? It's not super easy, but it's not impossible. Would you say that?
To be honest, I don't have enough knowledge to share that. So even though I'm also currently also software engineer, but I have never really thought deeply into that. So
What's your
I don't have any.
what's your intuition? I mean,
I would say it would be possible, but I'm really not sure.
got it. Cool. Thanks a lot. Yeah. Would you be interested in working on that? Like, does that interest you? Like writing mathematical theory in JavaScript for a learning facing app?
Yeah, I'd be interested. It would be a new challenge. For now I cannot imagine what it really look like, but it sounds fun.
Awesome. Super excited about that. Yeah. Guys. Ansgar, you've been a
Yeah,
little
well,
quiet. What's up?
sure. I mean, I'd have like two comments as well, maybe. So the first one, I mean, for me, that was basically my introduction to Solvio. I actually spent like the 20 minutes before the call watching the initial, like the recording from the first call. So I was already a little bit familiar, but that was like the first time hearing of Solvio. I mean, you sent me the links like a few days ago, but I had to submit my master's thesis like yesterday, so I wasn't really free to think about any of that before.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, sure, thanks. Speaking of education, the old centralized fashion way. But like, so my first impression, I mean, it was really interesting, and I think it was obvious that that has been something you've been thinking of for years now. At least that's how it came across. So for me, it wasn't completely clear. Basically, all the three products that you mentioned, that I mean, you said that they were only like exemplary and that wouldn't have to be limited to these, but they feel a little bit disconnected. So like the certification system, that made completely sense to have that in a decentralized blockchain way, and then you had this learning path building, which is also a very interesting service. I'm not that sold on why that should have to be decentralized, and I'm not that
Yes, I agree.
I don't fully understand how that has to be connected. I mean, both is education, and if you say you basically just want to be an education-focused project, that kind of makes sense, right? And
Yes.
then the solver is very, very math specific, and basically math is, I don't know, like 1 or 5% of education as a whole. So it's like a little bit specific, but so it's a little bit just not that certain how it's all connected, and basically what you would focus on first for an MVP. So that's basically like.
Got it. Perfect question. And I agree with you. So if I were to do the presentation again, maybe I would drop out Pruvio completely to make it more concise and on topic. But if I were to answer your question, the answer would be Pruvio is very disconnected. It's a separate app, and you're right. Solvio Learn and Solvio Advance, I'm planning, or the way I'm thinking about it is it would be one app. So essentially, imagine an app with 5 sections on the bottom. One of them is like your homepage. That could be the social network where you see other people. What have they done? Your friends, what have they learned? You could high five them. So that's actually another service. Then there would be kind of like your current state. So your current learning path and how on track you are, your progress. Then a search section where you could actually search for new topics and find those learning paths and add them to your curriculum. Mm-hmm. And then possibly a discover section where you could grade other people's works, and a profile section where you would see your personal learning profile, or in a way your personal knowledge tree. And that would kind of be this RPG aspect to it, where you would try to get more reputation, possibly in a topic specific area, by learning these things and getting credentials for it. So do you see how it kind of fits into one app? Did I make it more clear this time, that you search for stuff and then you also review them? So it's kind of, separate service. I totally agree that the Solvio Learn is merely just a computation, and it's just an algorithm. It has no decentralized aspect to it. It's just going through a database and doing some computation and then returning the best learning path that's parameterized by all the cool things that I mentioned. But it should nevertheless be part of the same app.
I mean, for me, to be completely honest, for me personally, as a user, I'd say that would be the most interesting part, because credentials, yes, I mean, it's a nice to have, right? But I wouldn't really be that interested in it. But the problem I usually have is if I want to learn something, I basically just by chance end up on some Coursera course or whatever, and then I like a few lectures in, I realized that, for example, a few months ago, I was trying to take like an intro to quantum computing course, and that like halfway through, I realized that I really had to do some physics fundamentals first, because otherwise it's just too hard, and then my motivation faded, right? And having like a tree where it would be really clear, okay, I already have this prerequisite, but I don't have this, and so I have to take these courses first. That'd be like a great service. So I feel like this part is great, and so I basically just wanted to get a feeling what the main focus would be in the beginning, and I think you answered that. So
totally. And if I can follow up, so I to answer the MVP, I think we should build the Solvio app first, and more specifically, I mean, there's the question of whether we should first build credentialing or the learning path search, and this discussion is actually in the ETH Paris thing. So Alex posted kind of a proposal for the decentralized testing, which testing is a particular case of credentialing. There's other ways to get credentialing, but the proposal is for testing. And then another person posted a proposal for the Solvio Learn thing. So we already have 2 proposals for, like, what is the first code that we start writing. And so essentially, if I understood from your comment correctly, you think that the learning path search is an easier proposal to start with. It's lower hanging fruit, and I personally agree with that. But there's more discussion to be had about to finalize this. Nevertheless, this proposal but from my friend is super useful because he really goes in depth about how to build this. And, this could be in the next release. So it's super useful that we already have this.
Sure. I mean, I don't even know about like the easier one. I just feel like it would be like the one more relevant to the core idea of Solvio. I don't know, but yeah, interesting.
I personally agree with you. Absolutely.
And like one more question, or maybe I don't know, comment/question. So the whole idea of Solvio basically is a little bit presupposed on like basic on this idea or I don't know, framework of thought, saying that the main problem with this decentralized education nowadays is this fractured nature where you don't really find the things you're looking for, and then the lack of easy credentialing, right? And I don't really have like a strong opinion on that. I just have like basically this intuition that for many people, or maybe even most, it isn't even that as a main problem. I feel like for most people, it's really the motivational part. And so the question is, do you have any thoughts on that apart from making it easier, approachable, gamifying it, or whatever, having more of these short-term intensive courses, but still, I think like for an average Coursera course, the completion rate is like 3% or something, and so basically, isn't there like a much more fundamental online learning problem yet to be solved in the incentive parts? I don't know.
I think I have an okay answer on this, and it is that I think the answer is quite natural. If you offer these courses and there is not effective credentialing system for it, but most importantly, if they're kind of super educational and that they're outside of the core educational formal framework, right? You can't apply for a visa with Coursera courses. You can't apply for a master's or PhD with Coursera courses. You can't apply for a government or a corporate job so if it's not recognized by society, right? That's one of the aspects to it. Ineffective credentialing. So that's another aspect to it. A third aspect I would definitely say is that's one thing that we're going to work on super hard. So I mentioned having a director of studies and subject mentors. I mentioned a personal assistant, a bot, send you notifications saying what you should be learning right now. And if we're able to, if you submit reviews on every single thing you do, like every 4 hours of learning, you submit a review, which is like a reflection / feedback / review. Then we'll have your director of studies will have data on when you're learning and whether you're on track to achieve your goals. And then the fifth answer would be, Solvio does assume some kind of freedom. And if you don't have that freedom, then you can always enroll in, well, I wouldn't say like that, but it's more like, there's people who would prefer more self-learning. There's people who would prefer more courses. Most people, the majority, would like both, right? I would like both online learning and, for example, that culminates in a short-term course where you can discuss the thing. If it's like a humanities course, you can actually go into discussion and debate of small groups, which is a super effective way to learn and gain a lot of skills, or like solve really cool problems or lab experiments if it's sciences. Self-learning that culminates in a course like that is another possibility. So what was this fifth point that I was trying to put across? I guess it was our thing does not assume self-learning. You can also structure your entire education through physical courses. It's just that we finally give you the freedom, right? You, your family, your parents, we give you the freedom. And most importantly, I think I forgot what I was going to say. So I'll leave it to Alex.
Yeah, Dominic, I just want to add something because I found the question super important, super interesting. I think lack of commitment is like a core problem in the current online education. But I think that actually you presented some proposals for this. And the one thing was that you have this bot mentor, which always reminds you what to like what to learn. Maybe you have like a scheduled path. Then also the fact that you mentioned if courses are recognized, such as Coursera, for getting, let's say, a visa to the US, this will be a huge incentive for people to finish those courses. And then the third thing is that you can get, through this testing scheme, you can get credentials on a very granular level. So also, although you maybe do not finish the whole course because you find, let's say, half of it boring, but half of it you done like an amazing project on it, you could get like someone could test you on this specific skill that was represented in 50% of the course, and then you could still get like a small credential that you know is you're an expert in this subfield. So I think granular credentialing will motivate you because you quickly get like a response, feedback that you achieved something, and so it was worth the time, but you don't need to finish everything if you find something boring. I actually want to summarize those things that we mentioned because it's like super important. Where can I post it into Solvio? Which part? In the discourse.
Yeah, I mean, make a new topic or category saying counter arguments, or like will people, and then post it there, or like will the freedom / responsibility of self-learning, a topic, and we can post it there. You guys are totally free to click this button if you don't find your topic in the current topics.
All right, I'll do a counter argument section and then try to collect all the things.
Yeah, it's maybe even just challenges, right? Because counter arguments, it's just something where it might be worthwhile to iterate on and think about. I think you mentioned, for example, that was, now that I think of it, that was something I found really interesting, where you said that maybe even separate people doing these, I don't know, for Oxford or Cambridge, these math courses, they don't even know of each other and don't have a way to be connected. And maybe it might make sense in order to overcome this incentive problem to specifically work on this connecting people part where you have some, I don't know, common chat rooms or whatever specific to people doing that one individual course, and maybe even have some common scheduling where all people do it at this, if it's possible and if it makes sense for them to do it at the same pace, so you are at the same point of the lecture. For example, Coursera usually has these courses start in a regular interval, and you can do them out of this interval, but it makes more sense to start in this specific like time frame, so everyone talking in the forums is at the same pace, right? And so having all of that come together in one scheduling form for all people and one community might go some way to overcome the problem if you have a community that learns with you.
I couldn't agree more. That's a really good comment. I personally have done Coursera, Udemy courses. I don't know why, but I never engage in the forum, or I never even start on time. So if you have more experience with this and you find that it really that you really like it, or that it really helps you stay motivated, or maybe that's why the reason I never finished my Coursera courses, which is quite ironic. Anyways, then it's definitely a really good point that we could expand this feature to all of online learning, right?
I think it's at least something maybe worth thinking about. Yeah,
definitely.
But overall, that's basically all I had to say. Overall, really interesting.
Now I'm thinking about why I don't finish my Coursera courses. I think you mentioned another really strong reason, which is the fact that you go to a course and then you realize you have to learn something else to learn it. But I think we discussed that as well.
But also, like, do you know Lambda School by any chance? That's this like San Francisco startup. They are doing like a coding school, and I read a little bit about because they are just like a rather successful startup, and they are iterating really fast. So it's interesting to see what kinds of lessons they are learning about online lecturing. And
yeah,
one thing they were basically finding out was that having lectures broadcast live at some specific time where everyone has to be online and stuff really increases participation, because people then basically, I don't know, it's kind of a weird thing. Maybe
no, I'm totally not surprised. I mean,
human mind, yeah, but if you really have a specific commitment to be online
absolutely.
at 8 p.m. and then, or maybe, I don't know, earlier probably, and then basically you have this fixed rhythm, I feel that goes a long way, where it's not just up to you and do you feel like it right now or not? Yeah.
I totally have the same intuition. I mean, I work remotely, and I have forced myself to watch all the company meetings live, even though there's a recording. Because if you can watch the recording today, and you can also watch it tomorrow, then you can also watch it in 1 week, and then it never happens, right? So there's this binary thing. Either it's live or you're watching a recording, and then it's much higher chance that you're gonna watch when it's live. That's also why for the Solvio regular calls, I want to encourage people to join the live sessions, because there's a chance that they're not going to find time for the recording. So I'm already incorporating that in building the community.
Yeah, just real quick. So I added it into Solvio. I mentioned 5 points of what we just discussed, the challenges. I think we should, like, if we collect all the challenges, then we can like reduce discussions in the regular course. And so, you know, this, I think commitment is like a super great topic. And next time somebody comes up with a different argument, so if we collect those here, we can always refer to them, so we don't have to discuss them each time. And maybe you can just sort them in, Dominic, because I don't know where I put it. And also,
Yeah,
Ansgar,
I mean, maybe there's a better way. Maybe we can, because there's categories and there's topics. So let's do it. Maybe we should do it like this. Maybe we should create a category that says challenges, and then rename this one to commitment, and tag that in the category.
yeah, I agree. Please do that. And Ansgar, also thanks for asking this very important question.
Yeah, sure. Just came to my mind.
Sweet. Awesome. Thanks so much, guys, for joining the second ever Solvio regular call. Let's the team that's going to ETH Paris, if we get accepted, let's have a call at earliest February 27, which is when I'm coming back from vacation, and let's change the world's education. Sound good to you guys? I tried to end on a inspirational note. Didn't really work out.
Sounds great. Bye bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a nice time in
Bye to
India.
you all.